property management makes me drink, right? After one of those trying days, long days, do you have a go-to or a favorite cocktail?
Of course.
All of them?
Actually, vodka with water and a splash of squeezy.
What is squeezy? Am I like aging myself here?
No, it's
okay.
The water flavors.
Okay. Yeah.
You squeeze them.
Okay.
So I just coined that name for some reason, and now I've got all my friends saying, "Do you have a squeezy? What kind of flavor squeezy do you have?" And I'm like, watermelon punch.
Okay.
So you're still hydrating yourself with water, and it's not just plain water. It's got some flavoring, and you get to have vodka and water and choose like a whole bunch of different flavors. Like, you should see my kitchen cabinet.
I was going to say, I can imagine a lineup of all the flavors not taking a lot of room.
Totally.
Do you have a preference on the vodka?
I have been drinking Rain. Have you ever seen it? Okay, it's got this really cool, like, decorative bottle.
Yeah.
Every time I take it to a party, people are like, "Can I have your bottle?" I was like, I need to drink it first. But it's $19 at most places, and it's distilled 7 times, so it's better than Tito's.
Yeah, no
And it's
crazy
cheaper.
hangovers.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone who's listening, Rain, vodka, water, and a splash of squeezy.
Well, you got about a week before I air this. I recommend, if you can, you go buy some stock in Rain.
Right.
Just in case their sales jump, you get a little something out of it. So, Sonny, obviously, I've known you for a long time. I think we figured something like 15 years at this point.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know you, I mean, obviously, you've been in the industry for every bit of those 15 years. I mean, just kind of run us through real quick a little bit of your background and your experience.
Sure. So I started at Aventine at Deerwood 17 years ago, and I started out in leasing, and then I got promoted to leasing manager, assistant manager, and then property manager. I was actually there for 7 years. And so I kind of grew up at that property. And then I got an opportunity to go work for Morgan Group, and I managed Aurelia, James Island, and Terraces at Town Center at the same time. That was a bear. Like, I was spending like 3 days in one office and then 2 days in another. And it was like separate budgets, separate offices, separate teams, separate invoices, separate everything. So that was a crazy time of my life. And then I also got a really great opportunity to move to Fort Lauderdale to do a lease-up, then Miami to do another lease-up. And I had to move back. Like, Miami's not me. I'm too old for all that. Like, I needed to come back home. So I came back to Jacksonville. I did Portiva's lease-up. I also did Ravella right afterwards, and then Valaris West Kernan, and then finally Terabella. So yeah,
So is that six or seven lease-ups?
8.
God.
Yeah.
all luxury.
All luxury, high end. And each one too, there was a time period, it was like 5 years in a row that I worked for 5 different companies. Because every time I'm finished a lease up, I would say, okay, that's my last lease up. I'm not doing this again. And then someone would come along and dangle the pretty little carrot, and I would be like, okay. But they're fun, they're fast paced, they're fun. You make a lot of money. So, it's some people get addicted to them, actually.
I mean, I think we could argue that maybe you did if you did 7 or 8 of them. I mean,
I guess I'm in denial on my addiction.
I mean, so much so that you were willing to move to be able to do some of them. So, I mean, I think there's something to be said for figuring out that formula in one market, right? Staying in Jacksonville and having that successful lease up, and then moving down the road, doing it again, and moving down the road and doing it again. And, so that's one formula. But to go to different markets, I think it's probably not the same formula in other places.
It definitely isn't, especially South Florida, because South Florida is a completely different bear. I had some of the weirdest situations happen to me in South Florida that I was literally like, I don't know what to do, My first week, I was at the Edge at Flagler Village in Fort Lauderdale. I had I was evicting, or they had started the eviction process on an apartment. And so this family comes down from the apartment, and it's a father, mother, and a small daughter, and they were German, so they couldn't speak English. And they were asking me, like, what is this paper? What is this paper? And I'm trying to explain to them, you need to pay rent. And by the way, what is your name? So we pulled up their information, and basically the guy that rented that apartment sold this family that hit this apartment and made them put down a $10,000 payment and then walked away. And so here they are, $10,000 later, and they are trying to buy an apartment that's not for sale.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, they obviously had one concept of what was going on, and on the other hand, I mean, they're not paying rent. So, I mean, you got to go, but...
Yeah, the guy stopped paying rent, changed the locks, and moved that family in. And here, all this time, they're thinking that they're purchasing this really nice apartment, and they just put their 10 grand down, and then now they're getting eviction notices, and they're like, we paid our money, and not to me, you didn't.
Wow.
It was a tough situation.
Well, I imagine there's law enforcement involved, too, on the original person who...
Absolutely, because that's complete fraud.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. But at the same time, here I am trying to enforce this. And I'm a person too, so I felt bad for this family that just moved from Germany. You know? Yeah. Well,
I'll add that to the list of things I don't like about Miami. Okay. Well, I mean, so 7 or 8 lease-ups? 8?
8. Yeah.
8 lease-ups. What is it that was so attractive about Lease-Ups?
You know, I actually never sought to be a lease-up manager, but I had a great opportunity through Morgan Group, and because the market was doing really well, and they worked with several different investor groups. They had the opportunity to do more lease-ups, and after you do one and you do it good, you kind of build a name for yourself, and that looks good. And I honestly, for the past 6 years, I have not looked for a job. Like, the jobs looked for me, and I'm very blessed to be able to say that, actually. So yeah, I didn't seek that out, but like I said, like you said, I probably got addicted to it.
Well, and so you say, right, when you do a lease up and you do it well, what does a lease up done well look like, right? What's that definition of well?
Well, honestly, that term is probably changing right now, this day. Before, if you were 10% pre-leased before you even opened your doors, you were doing good. Now there's properties that are 60% pre-leased before having their first move-in. So that term is changing. My record is having 35 apartments leased before opening the doors, and that is not even that's nothing today now. Yeah.
God, it's crazy. And I mean, I know not only that, but I mean, there are some that are having to raise rent already. Or not, I guess not having to, but I mean, the market is going up, so I mean, they're in. People are still beating down the door to get into these lease-ups.
And it's even crazy. People companies are selling their project before even having a first move-in, or before even opening their doors, based on their pre-leased numbers, and getting high dollar for it right now. I mean, this is the crazy time. It's not going to always be like this, but nothing ever is, So people are taking advantage of it like crazy right now. I mean, so many sales happenings and dispositions in Jacksonville, period, and all over the state, actually. So lots of money being traded right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good time to be in Florida. I could say it's probably a great time to be in Florida. It's a good time to be in Jacksonville. I'm sure this is happening in other markets as well, but I know that, the places the population is growing the most right now are places like Florida and Texas. So, there's probably some similar stuff going on out there as well.
I just read Florida is, or Jacksonville specifically, is the ranked 7 out of 15 most migrated cities right now, and that's because we don't have taxes in Florida, and not to mention we have a lot of opportunity for growth, and so people are migrating to Jacksonville, specifically in Florida, to have a better way of life and also be able to enjoy still a big city and all the cool things that come with that, and not have to pay like crazy arm and a leg for rent, because compared to Orlando and Tampa and Fort Lauderdale and Miami, we have pretty good rents here.
Yeah.
It's growing though.
Well, and I mean, considering that they can't build homes fast enough, so I mean, there's not even enough homes. We're seeing more people that are, I'll live in an apartment for a year or two. Well, they build my home, or I find a home. But I mean, we're very quickly going to be in a scenario where they can't build those fast enough either. I mean, I think, I think it was in the Jacksonville Business Journal. There's like 42 or 43 properties under construction in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Well, and honestly, I just started, so I'm not in property management anymore. I took a asset manager's position with Corner Lot Living, or Corner Lot Living is actually a division of Corner Lot Development. And Corner Lot Development builds homes, they build office spaces, hotels, and now with the Corner Lot Living division, we're building multifamily. So I have been fortunate enough to take on the new role. I've been learning a ton about development, and just from the ground up, just before we even purchase the land, there's so much that goes into that I never had privy to or access to, being a property manager and doing operations and solely concentrating on getting this building leased. Now it's, how do we get this building vertical?
Well, and I think, with your experience with Lease-Up, and I think a lot of people can relate to it, a lot of times you step into something that was someone else's vision, and, why did they do this? Whatever this is. But, what were they thinking? And now you get to see either you're right, they weren't thinking, and you're in a position where you can change that, or, there's something that prevents it from being different. And so, that's just how it is, and we've got to deal with it. So I think all that experience you have with Lease-Ups is going to be a pretty unique perspective for some of this new construction.
I agree. And that's one of the things I'm so excited about. I'm literally working on seven different projects that we're building in Jacksonville and St. Johns County. And we are introducing to the state of Florida a new innovative furniture design. This is what I'm going to say for now, because I can't really disclose much more, but it's exciting stuff. And I cannot wait to share, you guys. So as soon as I'm able to announce that, it's literally jaw-dropping stuff. It's beautiful and cool and innovative, and you've never seen anything like it. So I'm personally have the hand in helping, figure out what floor plans we're going to have and what kind of designs we're going to do, and hiring interior designers. And I literally wake up and am so excited to go to work every day. And not to mention, I actually work for an amazing company. They're a very family-oriented company. Their slogan is Jacks to the Max. And and it's because we are dedicated to building Jacksonville's economy. We use local vendors, local contractors, and we're all about making Jacksonville a better place to live and building our economy. Yeah.
It's so we met. Not met, but I came to see you at the office, and we got to sit down and kind of talk through, the podcast a little. Just the office alone, and then seeing some of the projects that they've done, the Corner Lot has done elsewhere in the country. I'm excited to see some of that stuff come to Jacksonville. I think it's going to be very different, and I think people are going to love it. I think we need it.
I agree. Our office is so cool. Did you not enjoy that?
Oh, yeah.
It's the Goodwin House, and it's an old historical home turned into an office space in Riverside. We are turning it into, it's an office by day and a special event space by night. If you're having a baby shower or a wedding.
I mean, it's waterfront. I mean, we sat in that conference room, and I mean, the big windows just looking out over the river. I mean, it's beautiful views. I think it's a great venue for that sort of thing.
It is. We have our own dock with a boat, and we actually just finished building a table out on the dock, a huge table. It's bigger than this one, where we can all go out there and work, like basically on the water. Bring our laptops, bring your headphones if you want. But I really am fortunate too, because not only am I working for a great company, I'm really doing something cool and different that is exciting, and I'm so thankful and blessed.
So my mind kind of goes as we have these conversations, and you talk about renting that space out, and I think back to some of the communities I lived and worked at where they did rent out the clubhouse, but it was, hey, don't mind the pool table, and there's a sofa here. It wasn't really a space that was designed for that. Were any of your new construction properties, did they have that design in mind that maybe we can rent this out, or is that something that you think would come in some of these newer properties as an amenity where a piece of the clubhouse is so nice and designed to be rented out for those birthday parties and showers and things like that?
So there's two parts to that question for me, because I recently have been touring lots of communities, trying to, see their amenity packages and what their floor plans look like. My experience with the clubhouses that I managed, I never liked to rent out a clubhouse. One major reason, and that's because these clubhouses have been absolutely amazing. And because they're so amazing, they would be rented out every Friday and Saturday of the month, or they would be rented out for every holiday. And when they are rented out, then the residents can't enjoy that. It's a public space. It's a public amenity. Mm-hmm. So it's just like saying renting out the pool, and then no one can go to the pool for that day. This is an amenity that is supposed to be for our residents. And so rather than look at the benefits of the additional income, I cared more about making the residents happy and having them enjoy that space. So I never rented out my clubhouses, but I have been seeing lots of communities now having a clubhouse and then having another party rentable space, because they want to keep both in mind. Yeah. And I think that that's a great idea. If you're not limited with square footage on your property, then that is a really great idea to have a separate space that is more for partying and entertaining, and then have a clubhouse that everyone can use.
God, I got myself with this chair again. The chair's got a little lever on it. I hit it with my foot, and I'd get like 3 inches shorter.
Yeah.
Because I think that the concerns are valid. That first off, like you said, it's an amenity for the residents to use, so it's kind of unfair if you're letting someone kind of shut it down for something private. But the NOI piece is nice. Making some extra income on that space. The other thing I think about too is the cleanliness, because a lot of these clubhouses are directly attached to the leasing office itself, and so if you have a party that runs until midnight on Friday, and then you're in there at 8 a.m. on Saturday, you got to clean before, and who knows what's going to happen.
Huge headache. Yeah. Why even bother with it?
Yeah, and so I feel like
for $100,
the middle ground would be on the new construction type stuff.
Yeah.
Designing the clubhouse with that in mind. Have a piece of the clubhouse that you can break off that's nice enough for those events, but when it is broken off, you're not missing out on anything. Like, don't put the only pool table in there, or the computers in there or something like that. Have it be just a space with that in mind. And I guess if you can design that and include that on the build without adding too much cost, then that NOI becomes relevant.
Well, and that's another thing too, because Like now, everyone, there was, back in the day, everyone had business centers, right? Well, now we're seeing like workspaces that are rentable. So, for instance, Terabella has 4 offices and 4 cubicles that are separate from the clubhouse that has free printing, all the snacks you can eat, all the coffee, and it's separate conference space, and it's for people who are renting those offices in those spaces. So you can only have access to that unless you have paid for it. And those offices range, the cubicles were 100, the offices were 350 to 450. And when we opened up, all 4 offices were leased and 2 cubicles were. So now we're seeing that, people still have our community still have their business centers, but now they're capitalizing on these workspaces to make some additional income.
Yeah, when you think with all the work from home going on, and there are places that exist that, I mean, that's what they are. They call it like work share. There's anything from a couch you can do an interview on to a cubicle to an actual office, and people rent that as their office. And kind of where my mind goes with this, there's a lot of people right now that are, the older properties are getting away from the common area laundry room. They're putting washer dryers in units, those that can, and they're, what do we do with this space now? I feel like that's a reasonable idea. I mean, you can't, hey, turn it into a wine bar. I mean, that costs a lot of money, and maybe you don't have what you need to do that. But to set up, get like a Court Furniture or somebody like that, and we're not sponsored by anybody, so that wasn't a drop for Court in general. It's just what came to mind. Just rent some furniture to build out some basic cubicles, and now not only do you have almost an amenity for those work from home people, but you've got some extra income.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess along the same idea. So with what you've seen on new construction, right, the competing with amenities is kind of, it's the name of the game right now. It's who's got the new cool, the innovative amenity. If you're an existing property nearby and you've got some space, maybe it's a laundry room or something like that. I mean, does anything come to mind as a good option to upgrade your amenities to be able to compete? Something that you could put in a space like that doesn't involve a wrecking ball and a bulldozer?
You can get creative with those kind of spaces by you could do a wine bar. I have seen them turn them into just basically like library rooms that to me was kind of boring and not really eye-catching but they were trying to save money also too.
Sure.
I know that for new construction, some of the cool amenities are like rooftop lounges, pools on a very high floor. Those are super, super cool.
Yeah, that one scares me. I just think about leaks from the pool. And,
I had a friend of mine who managed a building. Her name's Krista in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. Her pool was on the 18th floor.
It's a cool concept.
Yeah.
I just, maintenance background in my head kind of going to, how things work. I think about all that weight of the water, and then inevitably things with water leak over time, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, whatever, it is going to leak. The water flows down. I mean, I've seen what a washing machine can do. I can only imagine what a swimming pool would do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool amenity. It'd definitely help you sell it. And I guess, if you think about kind of the life cycle of a property, I mean, whoever builds it with that in mind isn't around in 20 years. They've sold it, several times over since then. So,
very true.
Cool amenity, not my problem in 20 years.
Right. I actually would be curious to call that property in 10 years from now and see how their maintenance has been on that pool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, again, super cool. I would go to a rooftop pool. It's a cool place to hang out. I just, I don't know. It's there's some interesting challenges that come with that. So.
Well, she actually got engaged up there too, so you could do a lot more than just swim.
Yeah, I mean that's God. And again, think about renting out space. When you have a pool that's that cool, you could almost have like cabanas that only residents have access to rent out. And,
right.
things like that. So it's still something residents have access to. But again, that NOI, that non-operating income, I mean, any opportunity to generate that, nobody's gonna think poorly about that. I'd say one of the other maybe overlooked pieces of the lease-up from a manager perspective is, you're typically one of the first ones on site, which means you then have to hire the staff. Good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, that's one of your early tasks. What were some of your kind of go-to ideas or processes for trying to get the right team?
So again, blessed and fortunate, because I have been in this market for so long and I've known so many people. I have been so fortunate to have employees follow me, or employees, when they find out I'm at a new project, to reach out to me. I hardly ever had to hire from outside or hire someone I didn't know. So I was very, very fortunate there. But I think that having a great team, being the first one on site, yes, but having a great team involves a team that, number one, cares about each other. They have to care about the residents and our prospects, and genuinely care, because if you are fake smiling and if you fake don't care, then it's going to show through. And so I think that my teams have been successful because they are literally people who care about helping this person and finding them their home and getting their service requests taken care of, and taking care of their nitpicky things that are on a list 20 long when they first move in, So, but I also, I'm not the expert in everything, of course, so I always strategically hire people that do things better than I do. Social media, for instance. I am not great with social media, but I surround myself with people that are. When I was going to another company and I didn't know the system Yardi, I surround myself with people that did. I mean, Danielle was my go-to girl. Anything Yardi, I was asking her. Maggie, anything social media, I learned from her too. So I think that having a very diverse team that all cares about one another is the foundation for success.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit a few key topics there, right? You can't teach someone to care, so you've got to have people that actually care. Understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, and then those of the team, and building a team that kind of checks all the boxes, or instead of trying to find one person that checks all the boxes and then another one of those people, right? It kind of using the whole team to balance that out, I think is smart. And without circling back, because I want to stay on this for a second, but it's funny, none of these have been scripted or anything like that, but in a few of the conversations, it's come up when we talk about, doing good things in your role. People talk a lot about doing what's right for the resident and helping the resident. And I think the outside mentality of our industry is that we're so focused on the asset. Let's, lease the apartment. Let's make a ton of money. And I mean, that's a byproduct of it, but it's funny that without kind of teeing you up, I didn't tell you to say that, that just kind of came up, and it's come up in other interviews that, you focus on helping the resident and keeping the resident happy and those sorts of things. And then the other piece, I mean, is a factor, but, the profit and all that comes later.
Well, because, I mean, bottom line, if we don't have residents, we don't have jobs, And if you are constantly getting bad, in this day and age, reviews are everything, right? And so if you're constantly getting bad reviews, you're also not going to get prospects or residents. Or you might have a few squeeze in, but it's because they're desperate and they couldn't find anything else. Honestly, if reputation is everything, and if you aren't genuinely caring about these people, they are genuinely not going to stay there.
So if I'm someone who's got, some amount of industry experience, whether it be a little or a lot, and I'm interested in moving to that lease-up down the street, and you're interviewing for that, what sorts of things are you looking for? What can I do, or what should I prepare? What kind of advice do you have for those people?
You know what? I'm always impressed when an interview comes in and has a folder and they know about this company and they know about their position. So even when someone is not in the leasing industry or the apartment industry and they come in and they at least have a idea of what the responsibilities are of the position, probably because they have a friend in there in the business, or they know someone else. But knowing about the company and being prepared is always impressive. But definitely let your personality shine, because in this business, personality is everything. If people go to see 10 to 15 apartments before they make their choice, right? So they're visiting 10 to 15 different leasing agents. Well, at the end of the day, you want that prospect to remember you. And I know that. So when I'm interviewing someone, their personality, if they don't let that out and shine, then they're not going to do it with a prospect, and therefore that prospect's not going to lease. They're going to lease down the road with a leasing agent that was memorable. So I think that above all, let your personality shine.
Yeah, so I think that's important, because I think when it comes to interviewing for any job, there are a lot of things that are common, but I think that's probably unique to this and maybe a few other positions that. A lot of times I'll cut someone slack in the interview if they're, you can tell they're nervous, they're, maybe a little more quiet because they're, trying to get comfortable. But like you said, you might have that prospect for 10 minutes, 30 minutes. It's important that you're comfortable right away. I feel like that's one of the skills you need to have, and that it's probably harder to teach. And so that's something that would come through in that interview.
Well, and that's why for when I'm interviewing someone and I can pick up that they're nervous, I'm like, hey, okay, first of all, I do my best to make them feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, I want to know what that real personality is like. I don't want to know what the nervous is. And some people just are naturally nervous in an interview, or maybe they really, 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 really want this job so bad, and they have a lot riding on it that they are working themselves up into this tizzy. So, I can't discount that, but all I can try to do is make them feel comfortable, tell them jokes, make them laugh. Sometimes I'll get up and say, let's go on a tour, and let's go look at the model, and let me get you excited about this for a minute. Yeah. And when they see the model, they start loosening up, and then then sometimes if they're really good, I'll say, why don't you sell me this model? Let's hear your spiel.
I'd say if you're someone that's listening and that you would be super excited, or that you're likely to get nervous in that interview, that I would focus on that, maybe practice, or I feel like interviewing on both sides of that table is a perishable skill. The less often you do it, the worse you are at it. So if you're someone that's been on site for a long time and hasn't had to interview, maybe role play with a friend or something to get more comfortable going into it.
100%.
And I'd say in the column of things that apply to probably any interview, when you start out by saying you like when they bring a folder, absolutely. Bring something, do some research, not just on the company that you want to come work for or the property, but I'm interviewing you, and LinkedIn's a thing. Mm-hmm. There's other social medias out there, so it's always somewhat impressive when I'm interviewing somebody and they mention a job that I did a couple of years ago. Not for that, but it shows me that you're willing to do that work, that you did the research. I don't care that you know that thing about me. I care that you took the time to try to learn that thing. Because if you're going to do that work for this interview, you're probably going to do that work for other things too. I can't help but wonder if with social media the way it is now, when a prospect comes in and they don't lease right then and there, if that Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever research of the prospect is something you do before follow-up.
We don't. And
Is that a fair housing thing?
I wouldn't say it's a fair housing thing, but unless you are doing it on everyone, I just think that's not why we want people to live there. We want anyone, right, that qualifies by our standards to be able to live in our community. We don't want them to live there because, they have a lot of friends, or, they're really great travelers and they go to a lot of really cool destinations. I want that person to live here. I can find out more about what they've done, So I just don't know how social media can help in following up with prospects. It's always great when you're with a prospect to build that rapport, right? Mm-hmm. And find out from them, what they like, what they enjoy, what their hobbies are, and also what they're looking for, rather than try to stalk them on Facebook.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's why I'm not currently a leasing agent.
For employers too, I know employers do that. But honestly, that's just it's in this day and age, it's tough. You certainly don't want that to be a factor in why you would or would not hire someone. For me, the leasing piece comes in is at the end of the day, it's a sales call. I'm trying to sell you. I'm trying to get you to buy or sign this lease. And if I can understand more of kind of what you like and what drives you, then maybe I can approach you in a different or a better way, to get you to sign that lease. Not so much for kind of weeding out, hey, we don't want this person to live here anyway. Right.
And I think that you're right. I think that a lot of people even, subconsciously would do that. And so it's probably best to avoid that.
But dude, it's done every day. A good-looking guy comes in, and the leasing agent, as soon as he walks out, she is pulling him up on Instagram. I guarantee it. It's happening every day.
God, it's not even relevant. But one of the properties I worked at, I remember back in the day used to fill out the paper card, the visit card or whatever. And this resident wrote down his email address, and his email address was old sexual chocolate. And some numbers, sexual chocolate something at yahoo.com. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I mean, if stuff like that, but to get into who knows what on a Facebook or Instagram, it's probably best that we don't see that stuff. That's fair. I kind of want to stay on the hiring piece a little bit because I feel like there's a lot of openings out there right now. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people that are kind of testing the waters, some that haven't done it for a long time. It's common in the industry. Like you said, there's one point you worked at a different property every year. Yeah. As a hiring manager, how does that reflect on a resume? If you see a resume where someone was at a new property every year or even, several in 1 year, is that a factor? Are there times where that's good, times where that's bad? I mean, I know there's no one right answer.
Yeah. Honestly, when I see that, and it's a leasing associate and they've gone to different lease-ups, in my opinion, that's not bad because I did the same thing. If it was a maintenance tech that has gone to a different property every year, that's not good. We want those techs. They don't get any additional incentive to hop around to different lease-ups unless it's for more money. But basically, we all paid pretty much the same for maintenance techs, so that shouldn't happen. I don't. It just depends on the position, actually.
Gotcha. So the context, right? So you see it on the resume. It's something we're going to talk about in the interview. So I guess if you're one of these people, be prepared to discuss why you did what you did. I know early on for me, I made a couple of quick moves early on, but it was always for either a promotion. I started as a groundskeeper, so groundskeeper to tech to supervisor is either one of those, or it was several dollars more, and the current company wasn't willing to pay it. But I think, I would say that the context is probably the key part. Mm-hmm.
And that's all explainable, what you just said, too. Very explainable and very understandable. and actually respectful. That you're wanting, that you've got that drive and initiative to, move up and seek a company that's willing to pay you what you're worth.
Well, trying to get that interview to be able to explain that, I guess, is the one concern. So I'm hopeful that most people listening, most people out there, don't look at that resume with the people that have jumped all over and say, I'm not even going to talk to this person. Just mark that as the first question you want to ask.
Exactly.
Give me some context here. And if you get the answer of someone that you think is only going to be there for a week and before they jump again, then it's a short interview. But if you're someone who has a resume that looks like that, just be prepared to tell that story. I would also say, and whether you agree or not, I imagine you would, but don't try to hide that on your resume. So you're afraid of the way that looks, so you maybe leave a couple jobs out or play with some dates. I'm a big fan of kind of stick with the truth.
Yeah,
the truth shall set you free, that kind of thing.
Well, the apartment industry is big and small, so if you're not truthful on your resume, it will come out. And how embarrassing is that?
Yeah.
And honestly, it doesn't matter how great you are. If you are a fibber on your resume and you're caught, that's an automatic red flag, and that's a hell no for me.
Yeah, I know most companies, even within that first, whatever that 45-day, 90-day, if they catch something like that where you lied on a resume or an application, it's no questions asked. You're done.
Yeah.
That integrity is a big piece, not just in the industry, just in life. So,
right.
For those of you that are younger and haven't learned that yet, take that to the bank. I don't even know how to segue into it, right? So, obviously we've known each other for a long time. You talked about working at Aventine for a long time. And that was, that's where I lived. That's where I lived while I was in the military. I started there as a groundskeeper, had a lot of firsts and a lot of the crazy stories that I know I either experienced directly or just happened at that property, and I'm aware of them. And when we talk about trying to share some of those crazy stories on this podcast, you were one of the first people that comes to mind. I guess it's a matter of opinion, but personally, it's one of the craziest and most impactful stories that I know. And obviously, anybody that's watching this can see your face that you know what I'm referring to.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah.
And just for those that are out of town, that property at the time was probably 8 years old, give or take.
Yep.
So, not so old. In one of the better parts of town, it was a luxury property. Mm-hmm. I like to tell people, right, the fair housing answer is that we had kind of a little bit of everybody living there. It wasn't strictly a college property or, any of that. It was close to universities, so there were some apartments that mommy and daddy rented for their kids.
Absolutely.
There were families there. I lived on site. You lived on site.
Yep. At one point we had like a little Melrose place there. Melrose, or for some of the older people, Knots Landing. Like every employee, including the manager, lived on site. And then we had a circle of friends there, and we were always going from, on Tuesday, building 300. On Wednesday, we were in building 400. On Thursday, it was building 800, dinners and happy hours back and forth. So that was super, super, super neat. But I do know what you're talking about, because I often forget this story. And it's just because I don't even think about like everything that actually happened that night, but it literally is the one of the craziest and most moving things that's ever happened to me.
So it was, I don't know the day of the week, but it was a weeknight. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the day of the week?
I think it was a Thursday. It was either a Tuesday or a Thursday. No, it was a Tuesday. And it was 11 o'clock at night, and I was already in bed with my partner. I actually was asleep. And so my partner heard a bunch of yelling and screaming in the breezeway. And I was the assistant manager at that time. And he's like, Sonny, wake up. There's some people yelling in the breezeway. I was like, just leave them alone. they'll go back to their apartment, just go back to sleep. So he gets out of bed and he goes and looks through the door, the peephole, and he comes back to the bed and grabs me, and he's like, Sonny, get up right now. So we go to open the door, and we see this guy, and he's literally trying to drag my neighbor. She lived in that same hallway. He was literally trying to drag her back into the apartment, and she's screaming and yelling. He's basically torn off her shirt, and her breasts were hanging out. And so my partner said, hey, stop, let her go. And when he yelled that, the guy turned and pointed a gun in my partner's face. And so at that moment, I grabbed the girl from him and pulled her into my apartment. My partner backed up, closed the door, and he's like, get away from the door, get away from the door. He could shoot through the door.
It's funny that at that point you're worried about getting shot through the door, but when he shoves a gun in your face, your instinct isn't to run away and worry about being shot. It's to grab the girl and pull her in.
Yeah, because he had let her go. So he had pulled, he had the gun in one hand, let her go, and then grabbed the gun with both hands, because that's how you're supposed to shoot a gun, and pointed it in my partner's face. So he let her go, so I grabbed her, pulled her inside the apartment. And like when we first got inside the apartment, I went to go look through the peephole to see if he's still there. And my partner's like, no, get away from the door. So we all run to the bedroom. We call 911. The police come. And she's obviously hysterical and going crazy. And she's like, she's like, my purse, my car keys, everything is in the apartment. So the police come and they're very calm.
Did you guys hear anything once you got her in there?
No.
Okay.
Silence. The police come, they're very calm. They're pulling us into the hallway separately, one by one, trying to get our take of the story. And so we all did that. And then now it's like 2:30 in the morning. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like, they're just asking us, like, what happened? Like, how come, like, I don't... So I walked outside onto the patio, onto the breezeway, and there's, gosh goodness, there must have been 25, 30 cops. I mean, flashing blue lights everywhere. And I said, hey, I'm the assistant manager. I'm really concerned because there's a guy with a gun on the property, and you've not really asked for a description of him. You've not asked what he was wearing. I'm like, what, are you not looking for him? And he said, sir, close the door and come here. Pulled me out on the breezeway, and he said, we're not looking for him because he's dead. And I was like, so he's like, but you cannot tell her because we don't need her going into the apartment until hazmat has gotten here and we've had his body removed safely. And so I said, well, what happened? And he basically went into her apartment. He fired a test shot into the ground, which went down the closet of the apartment below them.
I remember finding that bullet and taking it out of the ceiling.
And thankfully, that guy had just moved out that day, and so it was empty. And then he crawled into her bathtub and committed suicide, shot himself. So so that was crazy. And then now it's 5:30 in the morning. We're waiting for them to, let us know. They come in and let her know that that's what happened. And then obviously she's hysterical again. So she leaves my apartment to meet her mother that was coming there to help her. And then I never see her again. Like, literally never see her again. So I know that she quit her job and she moved to California. But soon after, we found out that this guy was a very well-known person in the community. He was a tattoo artist. And he left a suicide letter at his parents' house and said, I'm so sorry. I have to do what I'm doing. I'm going to take my life and this resident's life. And so her name was in the suicide letter. So he went there to kill her.
Yeah.
And me and my partner basically saved her life.
That's it. I remember seeing you the next day, and I mean, you came into work for a minute, and I mean, obviously took the day off. But I remember telling you that, you know, I know it's tough and it's going to be hard, but I mean, you guys absolutely saved her life, and that was before we knew that there was a note. I mean, just knowing, you know, it was a one-bedroom apartment. She was the only one on the lease. You know, granted, he was some kind of boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, so I mean, he may have been staying there, but I think we even found out that it was her gun. I believe she kept the gun in the apartment for self-defense. He came in and acquired the weapon.
Yep.
And, you know, that was his intent.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, so if that's not crazy enough, Jason, fast forward 3 months later, I'm at a friend's apartment, and my friend's neighbor from upstairs comes down, and I get to meet. I knew the neighbor, but she was with her new boyfriend, and I had never met him. And so me and him are on the patio talking and drinking, and so we're just doing small talk. And and he's like, "So how are things going?" And I'm like, "Great." And I said, "How are things have been for you?" And he's, "You know, it's been a tough 3 months. I had a family member that has passed away." And I said, "Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that." And then we start talking about that, and he tells me his brother's name, and it was the guy that committed suicide. And I was literally jaw dropped, and I said to him, "I hate to tell you this, but I'm actually one of the last people to see your brother alive. And I'm so sorry to tell you." And he made me tell him the entire story from front to back. I'm friends with this guy to this day. And if you're out there listening to this, please know that my heart is with you still. I know that having, you know, losing a family member is tough, but like, it was so weird. Out of all the people in the entire world, I run into this guy's brother 3 months later. Like, you can't make this up.
It's such a small world.
All the more reason why we should have an apartment reality show.
Yeah, I mean, good Lord. I guess the challenge with that is how do you time it so you capture some of that crazy stuff. But I mean, for something about that property, I don't know if it's on like an ancient Indian burial ground or something, but I mean, there was all kinds of crazy stuff that happened at that property. And it's not, when you think of a place that stuff like that would happen, that's not what you picture. I mean,
not at all.
It was a beautiful property. And not that bad stuff only happens at bad properties. I mean, what do they say, that like crime doesn't have a zip code or whatever?
Right.
I mean, that stuff, it absolutely happens everywhere. But I mean, there was a day that we were just driving by in the golf cart, and there were two guys walking out of an apartment with a TV. And we didn't recognize either as the guy on the lease. And, it turns out they were trying to steal his TV.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just, it's, I don't know. It's something about that property.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but guess what? I had a lot of fun there. I mean, I like literally grew up at that property, and that's what I remember, all of the really fun stuff and the people that I met. The crazy thing is, I was at Quest Diagnostics this morning, and I ran into this old lady who's a German lady that lived there. She lived at Velder. Do you remember that old lady that was very... she was really skinny, and she lived in building 300 on the ground floor, and she drove this like really tiny economical
down by the lake, that back corner. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Her.
Super friendly.
Yeah, super
nice.
friendly,
Yes.
and I can't remember her name to save my life. But she came to every resident function, and she was, we went through the journey with her of finding out the health scares that she was going through, and I remember us sending flowers to her hospital room when she was hospitalized, and I ran into her today, and she didn't recognize me. Yeah, she didn't. I said, well, I'll tell you what, it's okay. I said, she goes, do I know you? I was like, yeah. I said, I just wanted to come over and say hi. I recognized your voice, and I haven't seen you in years. And literally, it's been probably 12, 13 years. And she's older, so I can imagine I can understand her not recognizing me. But it felt good to see her and say hello and to know that she's still kicking.
I mean, and it's those relationships, too. I mean, that's why it bothers me when, outsiders, if you will, talk about the industry in such a negative light, and the landlord and, doing all these terrible things and trying to take your money and take your home away. And where, this is really the common story where it's, these residents that we're super close with and, to hang out with at the pool and, have this fun with at these events and drive to doctor's appointments and play therapist when they come in the office and they just want to sit down and talk for an hour. And I mean, that to me is how the industry is defined, and those crazy stories about the bad things are a very small piece, and they're the bad eggs.
Yep. But like you said, we wear many hats, and so we're party planners, we're therapists, we are counselors. But honestly, every day is different. Every day is exciting, and that's why they kind of just fall into this industry, and then they stay hooked. And I can't tell you how many people I have met that are VPs or are regionals and they said they started 20 years ago. They just kind of fell into it, and here they are now running these multi-million-dollar companies.
Yeah, I made a joke on the first recording about how it's one big inbred family.
Yeah.
The focus is not on inbred. The focus is on the fact that, people just stay and they bounce around from one place to the next, but you can't get out. It's like being in the mafia. You just, once you're in, you don't get out.
Yeah.
For the most part. So some do, but, and then some of those that get out end up coming back in a couple of years. I don't know what it is, but I think, part of it is just building those relationships with the residents. It's a job, but it becomes personal, and it's hard for it not to be.
Yeah. Well, and there's also so many different facets of this apartment industry, right? Like, look at me. I'm not in operations anymore. I don't necessarily get to deal with the resident anymore, but I'm still in multifamily, But still, at the end of the day, the apartment industry does make me drink. Hands down, every day.
Well, and I'd say that, so I did one lease-up from a maintenance perspective. And I'd say, people, especially from a maintenance side, they look at those and they're like, oh, it's a cake job. You're just calling in warranty work for a year. And that's not the case at all. And it's just different problems. When you talk about things making you want to drink, it's, you find out they didn't properly wire the heat in the thermostats. So when it finally gets cold, you find, you start getting all these calls. They all have the same problem. Now you're going back in every single unit, putting in that Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And just, those crazy problems. Or, the one apartment, I forget who it was. It was the same floor plan that Kelly lived in, that my wife lived in. But it wasn't her apartment, but there was a pantry that behind a bathroom, first floor, and the carpet kept getting wet. Thought that the resident overflowed their toilet, because you know how residents do stuff like that and then deny it and don't tell us. There was no other explanation. We cleaned up the carpet, go back in 3 days to take the fan out, and it's wet again. We're like, how does that happen? And we start thinking about it, and the third floor apartment had been vacant, because third floors, first floor leases first.
Right.
It had just moved in. And what they had done is when they hung the closet behind, or hung the shelf in the closet behind the bathroom, they drilled into the pipe that the toilet drains down. So every time that resident flushes their toilet, it would all puddle on the first floor. And so it's definitely different problems, different headaches.
Yeah.
Any crazy headaches come to mind?
Oh my God. I don't think we have all the time for that. I know, recently we had they switched the air conditioner lines. So when you turned it switched them with different apartments.
Yeah.
So here I am in 101 turning my thermostat up, and then it's actually changing that temperature in the next apartment.
Yeah.
And at one point we had 4 that were intertwined, and it was a nightmare trying to figure that out, because we were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Your AC is working. Like, literally, we're on the roof. Your AC is running. Like, it's working. Like, and it's only because the person next to them had turned the AC on. But yeah, it was kind of a bear to figure that one out. And you're just like, no way. You could have easily prevented that.
Yeah, from a maintenance perspective, I mean, we live by checklists. Every time we'd get a unit, we had the checklist, and every time we'd find a new crazy problem, we'd add it to the checklist. And I mean, that was one of them. Would thermostats turn on someone else's AC, or your inside unit being tied to someone else's outside unit, even the breaker. And so your AC would run, but it was running off someone else's power, so they were getting the bill. And so we'd have these crazy electric bills for vacant apartments, and come to find out it's because it's powering someone else's AC.
Yeah.
Definitely lived and died by the checklists. God, I remember, and so I guess this touches on a few things. It's new construction, but it's also just the nature of residents. We got a call. I was on call. It was like a Saturday morning, like 7 o'clock in the morning. A resident calls and he goes, "Hey, I'm at the airport." He lived next to the model. He's like, "When I went to bed last night, my feet got a little wet on the carpet, but I had an early flight, so I just went to bed. I got up this morning and there's like puddles in my apartment." I'm like, well, great, thanks for not calling in the flood last night. So I go to his apartment, and sure enough, but he was in the middle. There was an apartment on either side of him. It's all mostly wet on the wall coming from the model.
Oh, God.
So I opened the door to the model. It sounded like somebody had the bathtub on. The handle had blown off the faucet, and the faucet was like a geyser in the bathroom, and it had been going all night long. And this guy had noticed it and didn't want to call it in until the next morning. But again, new construction, we ended up having that happen with a couple of the faucets, and we brought in the faucet manufacturer, and they like hand tested every one of them and replaced a whole bunch of them. And I mean, just this concept, especially from the maintenance perspective, that new construction is brand new, it's perfect. It's definitely different. It's not painless. It's not perfect.
Well, and it's not just like maintenance stuff. Like, I've had more homeless squatter break-ins in new construction than like I can count. Like, and one time I'm literally like going to show this apartment, and I go to open the door, and someone from behind the door immediately closes it. And I'm like banging on the door, open up. And then I tell these prospects, I said, "Would you mind going back to the golf cart and waiting for me?" So I open the door, and this guy is in his underwear. He has set up camp in my apartment, and he's got his bicycle in there, and a bong filled with weed. And I said, "What are you doing in here?" He said, "I'm here to clean the apartment." I said, "No, you're not."
In your underwear?
Yeah. "Smoking weed? Thanks, but no thanks." "Yeah, no." I was like, "What?" I said, "No, you're not. I need you to leave now." He goes, "This isn't your apartment." And I said, "Yes, it is." So I decided it's no sense in arguing with this guy again. And I left him, and I went to go call the police. Long story short, he ended up jumping off the back balcony, but then he came back like 3 days later and got into the same apartment. Yes, the same apartment, and squatted again. And when they finally, the police finally found him, they couldn't do anything to him. They couldn't, because he hadn't been trespassed before. So it was like, I was just like, "Are you serious?" But then again, I felt bad because like this guy, so here I have all of his worldly belongings, right? And I held on to it for a couple days because I wanted to return them to him. You know, I did feel bad for this guy. Well, on the same day, two $300 skateboards were missing.
Oh my God.
Some were stolen. So then, fast forward a day later, this girl, I see her trying to get inside that apartment. And I said, ma'am, what are you doing? That's not your apartment. She goes, I was staying in here. And I said, yes, your father was caught in here. All of your belongings are being held. And I noticed on her back was one of the skateboards. And she said, my baby's clothes are in there, which is true. There was a ton of baby clothes in there that they were washing and in the dryer. She goes, my baby's clothes are in there. I need to have those back. They're mine. And I said, ma'am, I will return all of your stuff if you give me that skateboard. She goes, that's my skateboard. And I said, ma'am, that's a $300 skateboard, and I doubt that you could afford that. It's not your skateboard. I know exactly whose it is, and I will give you all of your baby clothes and your father's belongings if you give me that skateboard back. And she started getting in my face and cursing me out. And I was just like, you know what? I try to do a good thing here, but you're obviously not going to comply. So I walked away, and I went straight to the office, grabbed all his stuff, and took it to the dumpster. I'm like, you know, what can you do? I wanted to give them back, but I mean, gosh goodness, they stole $600 worth of skateboards. It caused me like $600 worth of damage to the apartment.
Well, and that's just the stuff you knew about too.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. It's tough, but I mean, it's something that you got to keep in mind too. So I'm sure going forward too, you know, when you were touring vacant apartments on at new construction, you're thinking about that, making sure that there isn't someone in there, and it's just the nature of new, the focus being on new, new construction, new challenges, new everything. Well, look, I hate to do this, but I mean, we've been going for over an hour. I mean, I feel like we could easily keep going, but in the interest of your time, I'm trying to keep these to an hour. Definitely love to have you back on again. I feel like there's plenty of things that we could easily sit down and talk about.
For sure.
Any last minute, anything that you wish we had covered, or any last minute words of advice? I'm not one to give like lots of great advice or anything like that. All I can say is that, be happy. Be happy, be happy, be happy. Life is too short to not. And, honestly, taking on this new role for myself, and seeing how happy I am, and I was happy before too, but seeing this another new level of happiness, I think everybody deserves that. So if you're not happy, remove yourself from that situation and get to a happy spot, because you deserve to be happy. And I can't add anything to that. That was good. You say you're somebody that can't offer good advice. That's solid advice. Thank you, Sonny. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.